So this is my digestion video number 3. Oops. We're at the point now where where chyme is leaving the stomach. Chyme is mostly made up of acidic, partially digested foods, really dietary protein. Fat, if we will, floating on top. Everything else, minerals, vitamins, kind of dissolved in the gastric juice, kind of floating around. And as the chyme transitions into the small intestine, it triggers a series of steps by which the pancreas will start to make its version of a juice. We call that pancreatic juice. Now, pancreatic juice is kind of like stomach juice or gastric juice. It has enzymes, yeah, but instead of making acid, it makes base to neutralize the chyme. If you didn't make pancreatic juice that had base, you would essentially cook your small intestine chemically, like taking raw fish, raw shrimp, adding lime juice to it, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of cilantro, a little bit of salt, throwing it in the refrigerator overnight, and calling that a ceviche. And you can eat that the following day. That's what you would do to your small intestine. So pancreatic juice has enzymes to finish breaking down stuff, and base to neutralize the acid of the chyme. And essentially, all that stuff will transition into the small intestine, and you just kind of allow the digestive process to take place. Big stuff gets broken into little stuff, and it gets into the bloodstream. We'll talk about that in the next slide. Now, what if you do eat fat? What if you go out for In-N-Out Burger and you have yourself a double-double? 2 burgers, 2 patties, 2 cheese. That's a lot of fat. That will enter into the small intestine from the stomach. And when fat shows up in the small intestine, that actually triggers another process by which the gallbladder, and so the gallbladder is what we call an accessory organ. It doesn't ever actually see food, but it holds on to something that's really important. So the liver makes a material called bile. And bile is really the equivalent of human soap. So we make bile during the day, we kind of build it up, and we store it in the gallbladder. So when we eat a lot of fat, we can dump the bile, if you will, quote unquote, onto the fat and allow the small intestine to more properly digest the fat. If you couldn't release bile or didn't make enough of it, they call that bile insufficiency, you wouldn't absorb all your fat. And it would just keep going on and do a good job of lubricating your large intestine. You do not want that to happen. There are bad outcomes when that happens, okay? So fat triggers bile, which helps us break down our fat. And the chyme, which is acidic, triggers the release of pancreatic juice. The pancreas makes the pancreatic juice. The liver makes the bile stored in the gallbladder. All right. So this process goes on for a while. And all the watery stuff gets freed up, and all the dietary fat and all the fat stuff gets freed up. And then eventually you're going to absorb stuff into the body for transportation to your bodily tissues. So if you look inside the small intestine, it's not a smooth tube like a PVC pipe we use to irrigate our yards. It's not a smooth tube. It's covered in these little hairs we call villi. And villi have even like little tiny little hairs on them, that we call microvilli. And if you look inside these little villi, microvilli things, each has, or they have, a capillary and a lacteal. Now, a lacteal is kind of like a capillary, but capillaries, they feed into the blood, into the blood supply, the circulatory system. Lacteals feed into the lymphatic system. The circulatory system carries blood. The lymphatic system is kind of like your white blood cell, your immune cell highway. The reason why they have both is watery stuff goes into the blood via the capillaries, and fatty stuff like fat-soluble molecules, cholesterol, which is a fat, fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, those go into the lymphatic system. Now, they don't stay there forever. Eventually, the lymphatic system dumps, if you will, or feeds into the circulatory system. But they do go into the lymph system for a while. And it could very well be that because fatty molecules float and they never see stomach acid, in theory, they don't really get cleansed. And I mean, there are toxins and molecules made by bacteria and viruses which are fatty in nature. And it would be awfully convenient for those kinds of molecules to be screened in the lymphatic system where the white blood cells are. And by the way, that is a whole, if you get into immunology, that's a whole process of of, immunology used to be considered a protein-based field, but now we know both protein and fats can trigger the immune system. So watery stuff, water, protein, vitamins that are watery, minerals, carbohydrates, those go into the blood. And fatty things like fat-soluble vitamins, cholesterol, fatty molecules that are found in our foods, those go into the lymph. And essentially, they get shipped off and stored into the body. And here's another good example of that. Alcohol is coming in from the stomach. We don't really cover that too much in this class. Here's our small intestine. So carbohydrates, water, water-soluble vitamins, and amino acids, those are the building blocks of protein. Fat-soluble vitamins, those will all come in the small intestine. And then notice, not everything is absorbed in the small intestine. Some things are absorbed in the colon, like water, and some vitamins, which may not be from the food we ate, but made in the large intestine from our own friendly bacteria. Most stuff gets absorbed in the small intestine. We're really good at it. Fiber never gets broken down, so we end up excreting that. But some things do get absorbed in the colon. Water and some vitamins. Biotin, which is a vitamin, and vitamin K, which is our clotting vitamin, those do get absorbed in the large intestine. And yeah, here's another way to look at it. So what do you mostly excrete? Really, dead bacteria, fiber, depending on how much dietary fiber you eat. Do you eat a lot of whole foods, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and some fluid? You don't want watery stools. That's not good because you never want to lose that much water. That would make you a dehydration risk. But I think most people recognize you don't want to be dehydrated and have to go to the bathroom, because then you will have firm stools or hard stools, and that's uncomfortable. It's frankly uncomfortable when people defecate to have a hard stool. So in sports and life, you want to be hydrated so that when you go to the bathroom, you aren't straining or having problems, and you want to allow your body to properly pass its waste. Another nice benefit of dietary fiber that we find in our plants is, the colon's not a very muscular organ. It has very, if you will, weak muscles. And so it needs something to push on. And, think of dietary fiber as giving your colon something to squeeze onto and allow yourself to be able to go to the bathroom. What maintains regularity? Dietary fiber and staying hydrated. Those are your friends when it comes to your GI tract. Okay, I think that's it for the overview of the GI tract. There's more detail in my lecture slides and notes. The next two videos will be on the energy portion of the chapter.